Sirens, Slammers, and Service, a podcast for female first responders by female first responders. My name is Nikki Cluche, and I will be your host. As a former correctional officer in Alberta for almost 2 decades and the founder of Blue Line Fitness Testing, which provides law enforcement fitness testing and first responder wellness workshops, I started this podcast as a way for female first responders to share the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of their daily work. I want to showcase the unique perspectives, skill sets, and personalities that women bring to a first responder career and share their stories. So get ready to laugh your ass off, learn a whole bunch, and be inspired by some pretty badass women. Let's go.
Welcome, guys. Season 2. We are kicking it off, and I am so fucking excited. I have the most amazing guest to start off the season. Her name is Laurie White. She's a retired RCMP officer, almost 24 years with the RCMP. She retired in January 2020. And she is also now an author. Amazing. Her book, 1033, An Officer Down Steps Back Up, came out in August of 2021. You can find it on Indigo and Amazon. Laurie, welcome, welcome, welcome. What have you been up to since you retired besides, writing a book?
Yeah, well, the book writing took me 22 years, so I was started a little bit before I retired, but COVID hit right after I retired, so that definitely dampened my plans. But it's been a good ride now in the last little while, especially now that things are starting to open up a little bit and people are starting to actually do things and go places. So thanks for having me on.
Yes, I'm so excited. Like I said, so Laurie reached out to me via LinkedIn, I think it was, wasn't it?
Yeah, I don't even actually know where I saw your podcast first, but I'd listened to a few episodes and I thought, okay, I'm going to just reach out.
I love it. And I'm so excited because, that's kind of how I delved into the podcast world too, as I was listening to From Uniforms to Unicorns, which is another amazing podcast, female first responders. And I was like, I have a story to tell. I think I'm just going to be brave and reach out. And they were amazing. And they were like, yes, get in here. Like, let's talk. And so I love it. I was so excited when I saw your name pop up in my inbox and being able to talk to you. And so let's do it. Tell me, you guys were going to hear this incredible story. If you've seen Laurie's book, you get a little teaser about kind of what happened to her in her journey through law enforcement. But how did you get into it? What was your thought process like going into law enforcement? Did you always want to be a police officer, or how did you kind of get to where you are?
So I'm not one of those people who always wanted to be a police officer. That was definitely not part of my path. I feel like a little bit defensive almost because I wasn't one of those people. And once I got to depot, I was surrounded by many people that had been their main mission for years and years and years. But for me, I really didn't consider it until actually after I got my master's degree. I was 23 and I had my master's degree and was living at home with my parents, paying off my student debt, and wasn't able to get a job. And I know profanity is okay on here. And at that time, I kept a giant stack of what I call my PFO letters, my please fuck off letters, all my applications that I was sending everywhere. And I would put myself out there, stick my neck out, and then get promptly disappointed when I got my PFO letter. So I kept that stack as a bit of a reminder of, it's just a bit of a reality check about what things were actually like when I actually finished university. And living with my parents was great in some ways, but definitely not what I saw happening when I was at that stage in my life. So when I was working one of the jobs that I had when I was living with my parents, I met a police officer, RCMP guy, who was in my hometown, and he was the one who actually encouraged me to apply. So I applied, I think January 95, and by August I was at depot. So that was how I ended up going.
So what was your what did you do in school then?
So I thought I was going to be a phys ed teacher. And then one of the jokes that I say is when I was in third year of my phys ed degree, I did a lot of substitute teaching at the time. My parents were both teachers, and I came from a small town, and I had several brothers. So oftentimes if they needed substitute teachers during the times that we were home from our various schooling endeavors, they would call our house and find one of us that was going to be available to be a substitute teacher. So I did a lot of that. And I remember distinctly this one time, I was 21, I think. And it was a grade 9 English class, 23 boys, 3 girls, a lot of testosterone flopping around in there. And it was a lot. It was a very long 75 minutes, no class material left for me or anything like that. And finally, thank God, the bell rang. And I went to turn off the light. And all of a sudden, one of the boys, who had been very problematic during the 75-minute class, hauled off and whacks me on the ass. And he tears off down the hall. So I instinctively chase him down. I catch up to him. I grab him by the scruff of the neck and I throw him up against the lockers and I'm like, and then I'm thinking, maybe teaching isn't for me. But that's actually what happened. That wasn't when I decided to go into policing, but as it turns out, the running and the chasing and the, taking control of situations, that was something I took great pride in at an earlier age.
That is amazing. I love it. See, because you know what? It's funny because when I left corrections and I was kind of like, what am I going to do? Like Blue Line is kind of still in its infancy and I'm not really sure. And I love coaching. I love coaching and teaching. And so I was like, well, maybe I'll go back and do an after degree in ed because I have a degree in criminology. Maybe I'll go back and do an after degree but I also thought to myself, the only people that I like to teach are like 7 and under, right? Like if you made me teach junior high school, that would be the equivalent of torture. Like if you said to me, we need to torture Nikki for information, it would be teach a junior high school class and you can't swear at them and you can't smack them and you can't you just have to be really professional with these grade 7, 8s and 9s. Like that would be the equivalent of torture. I honestly, hands down, I bow down to junior high school teachers because I would murder those kids. Like I cannot. That age grade is like a nightmare.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah, that's so funny. Okay, so 95, you said you're a depo in 95. And then what was depo like for you? Like, did you enjoy it? Was it just like a total culture shock?
Total culture shock for sure. Really had no idea what I was getting into. I didn't know anybody who really had been through it, other than this person who I'd met at the gym, and I really didn't know him very well at the time. So I really did not know what I was in for. So when I arrived there, sweating, very hot August, and lugged my trunk up the flights of stairs to my dorm. And I come from a family where I have 3 brothers and just me as the only girl. And I remember opening the dorm doors and there were 32 beds, like 16 on either side, like total paramilitary style. And I remember thinking, I have never shared a bedroom in my life. And now I have 31 roommates. This is going to be a lot. So there's no showering in private. There's no dressing, changing in private. Like it was a lot to take on, even on just that level, let alone the whole training part itself. So it was a big lifestyle adjustment.
Yeah, and I've heard that from I have quite a few friends still within the RCMP, and they say, it's very much a collective. It's very much instantly from the start. These are your new best friends, and whether you like each other or not, this is the group, and this is your troop, and this is what you will dress together, eat together, sleep together. Yeah, totally.
No dignity, no dignity with the bathroom stuff and all that either. It was a big shift and an instant one too.
Yeah, totally. And so you finished depo, and then where were you posted? What was your first post?
I was posted to Kitimat first. That was my first posting. So Kitimat was, I had actually listed on my choice sheet that I was hoping to go back to Ontario in some capacity. Second was Alberta, and third was BC. And I got Kitimat, which is in BC. So it just kind of goes to show you how much say you actually had in things back then.
It's still to this day. I had a friend that I worked with at the jail who went to depo, and he was a very experienced officer. We got hired at the same time. And when he went to depo, he'd already been, I think, 14 or 15 years in corrections. And his wife was at the jail and he had 2 kids. And he was like, yeah, I'll go anywhere, basically anywhere you want me to go. I prefer Alberta, as long as I'm within an hour of, a bigger city that would have a jail, a provincial jail that his wife could transfer to. And they ended up sticking him in butt fuck nowhere. It was 2 hours to the nearest town. It was 3 hours to the nearest town that had a jail that his wife could work at. And he was just like what? And then, these little 22 and 23-year-olds were getting Sylvan Lake and Stony Plain, and he's like, are you kidding me? I have a wife that needs to work. Why would? And those the young kids were like, we'll trade with you, right? But because he was experienced, they wanted to stick him in random nowhere, because it would be him on his own. Basically, you're working, you and one other constable. But yeah, so he ended up pulling out and going back to the jail, because he was like, I can't uproot my family and move my wife and my kids to nowhere where she can't work. That's just stupid, right? So it's crazy to me that they don't take stuff like that into consideration. I mean, I get operational requirements and things like that, but sometimes you kind of think that you just spent all this money putting this guy through this training. Doesn't seem like an efficient use of taxpayer money, but hey, who am I to say, right? Who am I to say?
Oh, agreed. And I think the collaboration really needs to be, maybe they're getting better. I don't know. This was obviously a long time ago for me, but I agree with you. I mean, they have to look at the person as a whole and all the things that are factors in that person's lives, because yeah, the amount of money that they spend to train is just crazy. Right. And so I get that not everyone can get every single thing that they want, but working in collaboration would probably be a little more helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So you go to, or sorry, let's go back. So anything from training that stuck out in your mind, anything that, any stories you have, anything you wanted to share from your depot experience?
I think one of the things that will come, well, I know we'll circle around to it in our conversation, just because of what your current work and that is too. And I was never a runner. I was very fit. I was a fitness instructor and I have phys ed degrees and all that kind of stuff, but I always hated running, and running has been seriously the bane of my existence for so long, because of course I end up losing my leg. However, what was interesting is when I reflect now on the time in training, all the running made me have a severe stress fracture in my ankle. And I remember thinking just how devastating it would be if I wasn't able to pass the pair because of this stupid stress fracture. But you have to keep running because you have to keep making your standards and doing all the things that you have to check off along the way. But the ultimate goal is making sure that you're able to do the pair test, the physical test that we have to do. And so that part, it's just funny, not funny, kind of ironic how not that long later, that whole running thing became such this big thing in my life.
I love it. And I also, running is the bane of my existence.
Oh.
I always say, I'm like, again, another way to torture me. If you would like to torture me, make me go do a 10K, because the entire time I'm like, this sucks. I hate this. I've been running for 45 seconds. It feels like 45 years. I'm counting things. I'm like, how many light posts are there? How many concrete cracks are there so that I can just get through this? This is agony, right? And my friends are all runners, are like, but you just got to keep pushing till you get to the runner's high. I'm like, there is no fucking runner's high. It's
Agreed.
A myth. That is a myth.
Total myth.
It's a myth.
Here. Never found that. And I just, as a fitness person too, it's almost like, what am I missing? What am I doing wrong? How am I not arriving at this, state of bliss that all these people seem to find? I sure did not find it back when I had two legs, let alone a few years later when I had one leg. I was like, oh my God, this running thing is just a bitch.
It's so funny that you said, because I totally agree. I'm like, yeah, I will do any other form. You want me to do burpees until I puke? Oh. Sign me up. I'll do burpees till I puke over going for a run.
Okay, burpees for me are a close second to the most loathed physical activity. So I'm going to have to disagree with you on that one.
That's so funny. Oh God, I love it. Okay, so you end up in Kitimat, which I actually am very familiar with. My husband is from Smithers, which is just a short sojourn away from Kitimat. And actually one of the first guys that I seriously dated was from Kitimat. And so, yeah, I've been up there. Beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful up there. A little rough, definitely a little rough. And so you were how old when you were in there, when you got to Kitimat?
So I had turned 26. So so I went there straight out of depot, and I kind of joke and say that when I landed at the airport in Terrace, which is about 45 minutes away, it was raining and it was night, and it proceeded to rain for the next 5 years because it was dreary. Like, it was dark, and it was an emotional day leaving my family and all that and going to the complete unknown. I don't know a soul. I don't have a place to live yet. Like, it was just a very overwhelming a couple of days. But to then land and it was just so dreary and gross out too, it just was not exactly the most welcoming environment.
And so what did you do? Were you just like, okay, I'm going to find a place, or I'm going to what are you doing?
So one of my coworkers had aligned me up with a 1-bedroom apartment, but I wasn't able to get possession quite yet. So I was staying in this shitty motel with, crappy shag carpet and orange furniture and all that. And I remember just sitting there looking out the window at the rain from this motel and thinking, oh my God, what have I done to my life? Like, what the fuck have I done? Like, I was looking for a career, and this is not looking all that appealing at this stage, that's for sure. So I cried myself to sleep that first night. Like, that's not exactly the tough cop demeanor that I was wanting to put forward, but it was pretty emotional.
It's the what have I done? I did the same thing. I moved across the world to Wales and did an exchange year, and I was so excited to do it. And then I got there, and I was upset leaving my friends, but I was still super excited. And then I got to the dorms, the student dorms, and was like, I knew nobody. I'm totally on my own. I was like, what the fuck am I doing? What am I doing with my life? Same thing, bawled in my room and was like, okay, well, I guess the first place I could go is to the pub to meet some people. So let's try that. As a police officer, probably not the best place. First place you want to go to in town is to the pub, right?
Well, and there weren't a lot of options in that way either, right? It's a small town. And then the other thing is shortly after I arrived and I got settled into my apartment and everything, they tried this new shift schedule, and I got put on straight nights for almost 10 months. So that was a lot. So talk about not having options to meet people and get involved in things and, get involved in, like, I'm really into sports, like I said. And so I couldn't really get on a softball team or curling or golf or anything like that because you're working a lot of nights and then you're up in the day. And so really all I did was go to the gym and turn around and kind of wait for my next shift. So it was really tough to establish some social connections other than with some work people.
Yeah. And how many people were in your detachment at that time? Small detachment too, right?
Yeah, I think probably 16, 17.
Wow. Yeah. So, and you're seeing maybe a third of them working with you on nights through as you're rotating through.
Yeah, like it was discouraging because the work was fun. Like I was enjoying that, but the quality of life was just not there. And so in those months, I kept thinking, okay, well, I can't just quit. Like quitting makes it look like I'm weak and I just can't take it and can't hack it and all that. And I could not live with myself after the disappointment that I'd felt after getting my master's and having moved back home. I thought, oh, I just don't really want to slink back to my hometown and have to move back in with my tail between my legs and like all that. And so I kind of gave myself a bit of a pep talk and said, okay, let's get to a year. And then if after a year, like that's a solid, reasonable amount of time, if after a year things still suck, then pack it in. But you can at least say, hey, you know what? I gave it a year. Like that's a pretty fair shot. So
totally.
That's what I did.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I mean, like, I agree. It's funny because there's like this point, and I was having a conversation with a friend the other day about, when you're in a situation that isn't ideal, right? And whether you make the choice to just tough it out, or whether you, make the choice that, and I, because I'm with you, like going through the shit that I went through in corrections and then making that choice to leave, right? Of that feeling of like, oh, my friends are like, don't give up. Don't let them do this to you. Don't let them win. And for me, it was like, at that point, it's not them winning. It's that my life is being destroyed for this. And I'm not choosing that life anymore. I'm choosing a different life. It's not that I've given up. It's not that they've beaten me. It's that I've made the conscious choice to be like, see ya, this is no longer healthy for me. This is, and so, but it's that fine balance of like, okay, am I choosing, to walk away, or have I just kind of been like, this is really hard and I don't want to do it anymore? Because sometimes you just want to say, this is really hard and I don't want to do it anymore, right? So I love that you kind of gave that parameter to yourself. I'm going to give it a year. If it's still absolutely awful and it sucks and I hate it, then I'll pull the pin and I'll go. So you make it to a year, you hopefully come off nights, because God, 10 months on nights is awful. Like I used to think 6 days on nights was awful. I can't imagine doing it straight for 10 months. No, like no. And so what happens? You come off nights and you kind of start to be able to have a better kind of life, a better, work-life balance.
Exactly. Like a year came and things had changed, and I was starting to, I started to know people and started to feel a little more comfortable doing the job. So I wasn't the newest person anymore. There had been some other people coming to the detachment. So it builds your confidence when you're able to share that wisdom and that experience because you've been learning it yourself with some of the newer people. So it helps build that confidence. And so things had changed and the schedule had changed, and I was developing a bit of a niche in the sexual assault investigation side of things. And so life was actually turning around quite a bit. And I was quite a bit like I was enjoying it a lot more. I was able to get out there and I was able to get golfing, and I was able to join a synchro skating team, got curling, like all those kinds of things were slowly starting to fall into place. And so I started to feel more comfortable and more like it was home. And I knew it was temporary because when I went there, it was a 5-year posting. So while I always knew going into it that my time was not going to be it's not where I was going to stay permanently, it started to feel a lot more like home and familiar. So it was a little easier to cope.
Yeah, I think it's like you said, when there's gets a little sense of normalcy, because that's the other part of it is, you're brand new to the job too. So it's not even like like usually, you feel comfortable if you're at home because that's your safe place. Well, when you're brand new and you don't really know anybody and you're kind of in just, like not really what you would consider home yet, that's not comfortable. Oh, okay. Well, if your home life is kind of crap, then some people take solace at being at work because they know what they're doing and they feel comfortable and they're good at their job, right? But when you're also new at that and struggling to figure out what to do and are you doing the right thing, and oh, you screwed that up, oh, see, okay, I guess I won't do it like that, or I don't even know how to do it and there's nobody working on night shift with me, so I guess I'll figure it out, right? That's just that kind of state of constant discomfort, which has got to be really hard to deal with too. So yeah, like sounds like that you just really kind of got thrown in, like sink or swim here and let's see what happens. And you swam, which is awesome. So then tell me about kind of your time in Kitimat. Tell me about, did you just stay as a constable? Did you what happened through there?
Yeah. So as I said, I started developing a little bit of a niche for sex assault investigations. And I tended to get some of those. And I think lots of times being one of the only females in a detachment, a lot of those files tend to just land on the females' desks, right? On the female officers' desks, just because of the nature of the crimes. And that was partly what happened with me, but I took an interest as well. So I got a little bit of extra training in that. And by the time it was, I'd say September 1998, I'd been investigating an alleged pedophile, and I was able to get enough information to get him to court for his first appearance on charges in September. And I think that after that initial file went to court, some of the other younger victims in the community, a small town, right? Word travels fast. I think some of them felt a little more comfortable coming forward and talking to me about what their experiences had been with this guy as well. And so the file grew. It grew more in the following 2 months. And so in November of 1998 is when I went to execute a search warrant. And that's when things changed dramatically.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun.
I can put in like theme music now, and then we can cut to commercial, and then we can come back. It'll be like Dateline, right? Okay, so I guess let's get into this because this really is kind of the meat of your journey and your story, and you're going to execute the search warrant. Guide me through of like what happens and how this changed kind of the rest of your life.
So 3 of us went to do the search warrant. The file was mine. I was the primary investigator on it. And I was standing on the right side of the door. One of my partners was on the left. And then the third member that was with us was in the rear of the house. And it was a townhouse complex. So probably, I think about 10 units in there. And so it wasn't the end unit. I'd say maybe it was the 7th or something like that. So they were all carports where I was underneath the carport area. And then, as I said, I was with one in that side with me. And then the third one was the other side or the behind the house. And all of a sudden I just heard a loud pop. And it was like a balloon popped right beside my ear and my head was reverberating. And all of a sudden there was this weird distance and I couldn't really hear things properly. And it's like when you leave a rock concert and you know how your ears are buzzing for a long time afterwards, just because of the intensity of the sound. And that's exactly what it felt like to me. So I hear this loud pop. It's like a balloon pop beside my ear. I see this hole in the white door. I smell gunpowder, that sort of familiar smell of gunpowder. And I taste the particles on my tongue and I look down and I see this smoke. It's grayish, blackish, whitish coming from my right shin. And I say to my partner, I've been shot. And he's like, what? And I said, I've been shot. And he goes, well, lie down. So I laid down. It was my right leg. And so I lay down kind of on my left side. And he quickly looked and said, Kay, you've got one bullet hole to your shin. And he grabbed me by the back of my neck or back of the collar and the back of my gun belt. And he dragged me to safety. And I heard him say on the radio, we have 1033. And in the policing world, 1033 is the worst code possible. It means officer down, means everybody drop what they're doing. It's emergency and come. We need all the help we can get. And that's the first thing that I really remember hearing in that moment.
Wow. I have chills. I have goosebumps because it's so like, we go into these daily duties and you always know that there's like a chance, an opportunity that something could go wrong, but you always also kind of, it becomes routine and you become like, well, I'm just going to execute this search warrant. And then in literally like that is how quickly it can change. And then, to be like, what was that noise? What is happening? Oh my God. Right. And to hear that And so, I mean, so he gets you to safety. And so where, like, what else is going on? I'm assuming obviously you're finding this out after the fact, because right now you're just in the shock and the pain. Like, I mean, you must have been in an insane amount of pain. And like, what is happening as you're kind of being like sheltered away from what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, it was so weird how all my senses kicked in before my brain actually figured it out. And while it takes me a lot longer to explain the progression of events, it was like literally a split second. But I remember all my senses really kicking into high gear. And I remember just the chaos, like the sirens were instantly happening. I could hear them coming from all over. The firefighters are also paramedics there. And the two of them that were first on scene, just like their eyes were wide as anything. And I knew them both because it's small town. Of course, we're always at the same calls. They both just hustled in there. Like they sprinted towards me, and one collected me underneath my knees and the other one collected me underneath my armpits. And then they just ran towards the waiting ambulance with me. And when they were running, I remember my leg dangling. Like I remember this really weird feeling. But I obviously knew that I had been shot in my leg, but I really didn't know the degree of the injury. And so they rushed me down to the hospital, and there was a lot of chaotic stuff happening. It was a trauma situation. I was losing blood at an alarming rate. It was, they were making arrangements for me to be medevaced to Vancouver. So of course, it's serious when you're getting medevaced out. And I just remember lying on that stretcher, and I don't know if it was it's probably just a survival skill, but you try to you focus on stupid things when your life's in danger. And so in those moments, I remember focusing on blinking. Blinking was really important because blinking was proof that I was alive and that I was going to be, if I could continue to prove to myself that I was alive, that was a win. And also I remember a coworker coming in and saying, Laurie, do you have any dying declarations? And I'm like, dying declarations? What the hell is a dying declaration? And then, so you find yourself thinking back, like, did I take that in Depot? Like, what did I learn about dying declarations? What does that mean? Am I dying? And I remember patting down my torso and my guts and going, okay, did I get shot somewhere else too? Like, what else is happening here? Am I only focused on the leg one? Is that the one that's the most painful? So that's the one where I'm hyper focused on, but like, am I actually injured in a different way as well? So I just remember focusing on a lot of other things. In those moments, I remember being asked what my parents' phone number was, what my best friend's phone number was, like all those kinds of things. So you remember focusing on, like I'm going to be going down to Vancouver. My best friend at the time was posted to Coquitlam, and I was thinking, I haven't seen her in a long time. At least I'll get to see her. Like, it's just, so my life's in danger here. And yet I'm thinking, it'll be nice to have a catch up with her. Like, your brain does weird things when you're in survival mode. That's all I can really say.
It does. I'm with you. And for me, it's like, it's happening. Like I said, it's happening so fast. But in your mind, you're like, dum, like, and I'm going to think about this. And then logically, I'm thinking, well, like, if I do this, then this is going to happen. So then I don't want to do this because then this will happen. And then this will, and this will impact us. But like, that's like microseconds. And your mind is just like slowed right down and you're just thinking things through, right? Like, it's crazy how many thoughts you can have in the period of like microseconds. So yeah.
Rabbit holes. So find all kinds of rabbit holes to go down.
So you get medevac down to Vancouver, and you're in Vancouver, and like, at what point does somebody tell you, like, hey, by the way, like, this is what your injury is, this is what, like, this is the severity of what you're going through, like, what was that like?
So I think I was conscious for about 4 hours. And then there was a surgery that was about 8 hours, apparently, once I arrived in Vancouver. And at no point when I was conscious for those hours before I succumbed to the shock and the blood loss and all that, nobody really, I don't remember any conversation really about the extent of the injury. I just don't recall anything on that level. And then, of course, I was in surgery. So when I woke up from surgery, that's when I was given the news that my injury had been so severe that they had tried for a very long time to restore circulation to my foot, but they were unable to do so. So they had taken chunks of my vein. There's a big vein on the inside of your thighs. And so they had taken chunks of that vein to try to restore circulation. And they tried numerous times and were unsuccessful. So the end result was finally that he had to amputate. And I remember the orthopedic surgeon and the vascular surgeons, and that it was it's like almost like a personal professional challenge, right? Kind of thing to try to see what they could do and if they could save my leg and that. And I remember them being very emotional when they spoke to me about what they had done and how the surgery had progressed, but they just were unable to. So there I was, amputated leg, 28 years old. My lower leg is amputated about 5 inches below my right knee. And yeah, I just really did not, I couldn't process it. I mean, that word, I was heavily drugged. I was in an immense amount of pain because there was just a lot happening, and I didn't even look to see, because I think that I felt like if I didn't look, then it wasn't real. So if I could just not look, it would just be easier for everybody.
It's just like I said, I'm sitting here and I'm hearing what you're saying, and I'm emotionally there with you, and I'm feeling, and at the same time, I'm just thinking, I don't know what the fuck I would do. I don't know what the fuck I would do if this had happened to me, because I always, you see these amazing tales, and like you're one of those people that have come back from these things, or, people that, became quadriplegics and then went on and played Olympic basketball, or and I'm like, I would love to think that I would be one of those people, that I would be like, okay, here's a challenge, I'm going to rise to the challenge. But I don't necessarily know that is what I would do. Like, I think I probably would be pretty pissed off and pretty depressed, and wallow in my own self-pity of the fact of like, my life has drastically changed now. The sports that I play, I can no longer play. The things that I do that bring me joy, I can no longer do them in the same way, right? I don't even know how people can process that, and how you can, and the fact that you're in an insane amount of pain, and just trying to like get through that, just trying to heal physically while mentally trying to wrap your head around what has changed in your life. And I'm assuming like every new thought would be another kind of like, acts in your heart of like, oh God, I can't do that. Oh my God, I won't be able to do that. Oh my, what, like, what about shoes? What about this? What about that? What am I going to do? Right. Like, so that's just, it's crazy to me. And I mean, like, massively applaud you for continuing on and being such a badass after this, because there's choices that people can make. And you obviously made the choice to be a total badass survivor, which is phenomenal. So,
but let's face it though, like that, I appreciate that. And I'm honored and humbled that you would say all those things. And while I do feel like I did make some really good choices along the way and everything, I really am a big believer that the only way to really truly take pride in the things that you've accomplished or succeeded at is to really acknowledge the darkness too. And I had a lot of that. So I talk about that a lot in my book too. It's just like, it's not just a constant upward trajectory, if you will, it's not just like rah, 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 like, look at me go. Like, it's not at all like that. There's a lot of down times, a lot of dark times. I was suicidal for a while. I talk very openly about that. I was highly depressed. I was in denial for a long time. Like, I had a lot of emotions as well to deal with. So while I hope that the takeaways are the positives, I really think that I appreciate them more because of the negatives and the downs and the lows.
Yes. I also agree to that. I think that it is, you have to get through the darkness in order to see the light, and you have to live in that darkness. And sometimes that darkness takes a long time to live through. And sometimes, it's a little bit of a blip. But yeah, I think, and you don't appreciate the awesome things without having that darkness. So I'm totally with you on that. So take me back. So I'm assuming, obviously, the person that you were going to serve the search warrant on is the person that shot you. So what happens with that? Because then you also have to go back and deal with the trial, and go back and deal with the fact that you're a victim of a crime that you were also trying to like fix for the community. So how did that play out for you?
So he actually, there was a standoff that day. They had to take, a certain amount of time to assemble the emergency response team, because of course, being in the north and people were spread out all across, geographically there, it's just a big distance for them to all be coming from. So to my knowledge, there was a standoff that lasted about 10 hours with him. So there was a hostage negotiator and all that. And he had actually shot 2 shots. I only heard 1 pop, but he actually shot 2 in quick succession, I think. And one came out the front to me and the other one went out the back and was very close to hitting my partner that was in the rear of the house. So thank God he was okay physically from that. But it was about a 10-hour standoff. And by the time they were able to get into the house, he had killed himself.
Of course.
So I didn't have a trial. I had an inquest to do. And while, suicide's never the answer. I feel sorry for his family and all that. But selfishly, I'm grateful I didn't have to go through a trial, because that would have been a whole other level of pain that I'm grateful that I didn't have to go through from a selfish perspective. The inquest was difficult enough and it was very short, but it was very emotional as well. And so I don't know how I would have coped with a longer trial.
For sure. Oh, for sure. Because that would just it would be re-traumatizing yourself daily, right? I guess there's always questions that you would have, right? Like why he just didn't want to be he didn't want the search warrant executed. He didn't want, the warrant executed. He didn't want to be basically held held accountable for his actions. Is that kind of the feeling or the understanding as to why he was shooting out at you guys?
I think he felt like I was after him, which in his mind would make sense, because the previous file was mine as well. And now I'm coming back with this new. So I think that he felt maybe targeted or attacked or something. That's only just me guessing at it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that he felt like he was sort of backed into a corner and it was a panic move. And I was painting him out to be somebody that maybe he wasn't, and he didn't believe that he was. Mm-hmm. That's really all I can guess to that.
Yeah. It's a speculate. Yeah. Wow. Okay, well, enough about him, because we don't care about him. I like it. That's very good. So for people that didn't see that, we're just dropping finger bombs right now because I agree wholeheartedly. So take me now. So you're in the hospital, you're basically trying to figure out what you're going to do. So how was this? I'm assuming the rehabilitation, the time in the hospital was quite lengthy. How did that play out? How are you moving through that?
Well, I was in denial, like I said, for quite a while. And I went for lunch yesterday with the chaplain that was, he's been with the RCMP for ages. And we were chatting about this very situation. And what ended up happening is somebody knew of an RCMP officer who had lost his leg 3 months before I had, and he had lost his leg due to cancer. So his name was Les Yee. And somebody had arranged for him to show up in my hospital room. And I had a lot of anxiety about meeting him, because I just hadn't really faced up to my own physical realities at all. I was still really having a difficult time controlling the pain. And it was a media circus. It was a very high profile situation. So I was inundated with visitors, which was great, but it was also helping me stay distracted, because I was kind of playing hostess in my hospital room a little bit when I was up for it. So when Les came in my room back then, there were those tearaway pants. You're too young to know about those, but
oh no, we talked about rocked those babies, rocked those.
So Les comes in and he's got this giant smile, and if you knew him, he was just a force to be reckoned with. He was just a big personality, and he came into my hospital room, and I remember him being so positive, and we're going to do the pair together, Laurie. We're going to pass this physical test. We're going to do that together, and then he pulls his snaps on his tearaway pants and he shows me his leg. And I hadn't seen a prosthetic leg up close. That was a lot for me. And so I felt like I was covering my eyes a little bit, but I was kind of nervously looking. I was kind of intrigued, but I was scared as hell. So it was a really weird kind of emotional struggle that I was having internally with what I was seeing. But he was so inspiring. And he was so positive and confident that we were going to be able to do this. And it really motivated me, and it gave me some hope, which I desperately needed. And I really could only come from someone like him. I really felt like there were all these positive things. People were giving me books and telling me that I should be so grateful that I lived, and I was angry. And there were all these things that just weren't sitting well with me. But his visit was pivotal.
I love it. And see, that's amazing, because I think it's true. You, as much as we say, and as much as, the positivity, and I try very hard to, always be grateful and find something, positive to see in each situation. Sometimes when people are telling you to be positive, the only thing you want to do is tell them to go fuck themselves because you want to wallow in your negativity and you just need a moment to be negative, and don't fucking tell me to be positive, and don't tell me to read this stupid fucking book, and don't give me a goddamn positive quote because I don't want it. I want to be mad, and I want to be hurt, and I want to be angry, and I want to, like, and so
you deserve to have all those things. And I don't want to be told like God only gives you as much as you can handle, or whatever that phrase is. I'm like, fuck. And I don't know what I did to prove to God that this is what I deserve to get in 28 years old. And this is what I need to face. I don't know. Like there were so many things that and I remember somebody telling me phantom pain was all in my head. And if I could have, I would have fucking strangled the guy, because honest to God, like if anyone's experienced phantom pain, there is no way that my head could have ever drummed. This is not a psychological phenomenon that's just like, it is a crazy physical attack, and it is so hard to explain. And so to be told that it was just, some level of weakness in myself, that I just, so there were a lot of messages that were coming in and landing wrong.
Yeah. Well, and that's exactly it. And people, and I mean, again, people just trying to do their best to try and make you feel better. Right. But sometimes you're just like, just leave me alone and let me be negative and grumpy and mad and sad. And when I'm ready to see the positive in this, I'll call you on back and you can bring me all the positive quotes you want to. But right now I need you to fuck off.
Yeah. Just stop talking.
Yeah. So you don't know who organized for Les to come to see you?
I mean, I know some names that were in there, but yeah, I don't exactly know who was responsible for him coming, but it was a tremendous experience to just be in his presence, because he just was so inspiring. And so I was very grateful for that, but it really gave me a lot of hope for what we could possibly accomplish.
It's good. It's good. Sometimes, and like I said, sometimes it is, you just need to see the reality of like, oh, okay. All right. Okay. It is different. It's definitely not the same as it was before. I will not be returning to the majority of the things that I was doing before, but like, look at this whole new reality that's also open to me now, and seeing another person living it is enough to kind of go, okay, all right, that's an option. Like I can start to maybe put that in my head that could be something that I could do, right? And so
it was him who actually was the one who said, like, we can do the pair. And I was thinking, nobody else had been visiting me in the weeks or days leading up to that. We weren't talking about any of that. Like that was not even a conversation. But when he came in there and he walked in on his own, so he had that level of independence and also felt confident that the pair was a possibility. And it really, I guess, I think a light bulb went off in my own head too. Like, oh, well, maybe there is some possibility here, and some things that I didn't think were going to be in my future. Maybe I need to shift my thinking.
Wow. Are you guys as blown away as I am with this episode so far? It's so awesome we had to cut it into two. In part 2, Laurie describes her journey beyond surgery as an amputee, and if and when she would get back into the RCMP as a full service member. Make sure you check out part 2 of this awesome episode next week. Well, that's it for today, guys. Thanks so much for listening, tuning in, and sharing your time and energy with us. Make sure you check out our next episode starring another badass female first responder on Apple, Spotify, or TuneIn. And make sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Blue Line Fitness Testing. Stay safe and keep your head on a swivel.